Hi, in this video I'm going to cover these three questions. The first one is, can you use AI in your work? The next one is it academic misconduct to use generative AI? And when I say generative AI, I mean platforms such as ChatGPT, DeepSeek, Google Gemini, etc. The next one is it plagiarism to use generative AI? Now, in this video, I'm actually going to present specific case examples. For example, if you copied a paragraph from a journal, if you paraphrase that, would that be considered plagiarism? And I've got a couple of examples which I'm going to talk about. Now, why should you listen to me? Well, I've worked in university for more than 15 years. I have written disciplinary procedures dealing with academic misconduct. I've overseen many cases dealing with plagiarism and academic misconduct, and I'm going to report to you some of my findings, and hopefully this will be helpful to you. Now, in order to address these three questions, we need to look at what plagiarism is. And put simply, it's copying or taking someone else's intellectual property, that could be their ideas, music, artworks, written works, and presenting it as your own. So in effect, it's like stealing. So if one does that, one could be charged with plagiarism. Now, that's the most common definition of plagiarism, but there are other aspects which can also fall under plagiarism, which I'll also be presenting in this video. Now, one of the reasons why this topic is not cut and dry, meaning it's not black and white, is because when we're assessing whether something is plagiarized, we look at a couple of factors. The first one is how much of the work was copied. The next one is, was there citation? The next one is, how much of the copied work becomes part of your work? For example, if you wrote a 100-page research project, maybe a master's dissertation, and there was maybe a paragraph that someone picked up to be plagiarized, that's not the same as if you submitted an entire document that was copied. So we have to look at these things in terms of mitigating and aggravating circumstances. Another factor is what level is the student at? For example, is this a high school student or is this a university student? Is it a first-year student or is this a postgrad student? Lastly, we also look at what is the purpose of the work. Is it an assignment or is this going to be published? Is this like a master's or maybe a journal article? So this is what makes dealing with plagiarism a little bit difficult when we have to look at the context. Right, so one more definition, and that is what is academic misconduct, because there's often confusion here. Is plagiarism academic misconduct? Yes. Is all academic misconduct plagiarism? No. For example, if you get someone to sit in your exam for you, that's not plagiarism, but it is impersonation, which is academic misconduct. Now, why I'm covering all these definitions is because when I go through the cases, it will speak to these definitions. So the question is, if I'm using AI to assist in my learning, is this going to be academic misconduct? Is it going to be misconduct if I use generative AI, if I use ChatGPT to help me with my work? So let's look at some specific cases. So in this table, I have some examples. I've actually got 8 examples. I'm going to go through these one by one. This is the student's action, and this is my comment from my experience, what we would do with these type of cases. Okay, so let's start with number 1. Say, for example, you compiled your own work. It's your own research. You wrote it up yourself. You did your own paraphrasing, and now you want ChatGPT or other generative AI to edit the work for you for grammar. You want to improve your grammar. Will this be academic misconduct if you use ChatGPT? The answer is no. In fact, this will be accepted and at times even recommended. Not everyone is a first language English speaker, for example, and they should have tools which can help them with their grammar. It's almost like taking it to a copy editor and asking such a person to edit the work. It's still your work, they're just changing things here and there to make it sound a bit better. So yes, an AI detector might flag it and say there is AI content, but it's your own work. So you have the original documents, which if you're called upon, you can show the original work. So in this case, this would be accepted and it should not raise any ethical queries about your conduct. The next one is, say for example, you copy and paste paragraphs directly from a journal article into ChatGPT. You ask ChatGPT to rewrite or paraphrase these paragraphs and you submit it as your own work. This is not going to be accepted, or it should not be accepted, and you might find a charge of academic misconduct follows because this is plagiarism. Even though you're putting it in other words, or ChatGPT is actually putting it in other words, you're still taking someone else's intellectual property, their ideas, and therefore this would be considered plagiarism. Number 3, you copy and paste journal article paragraphs, whole paragraphs, into ChatGPT, and you ask ChatGPT to rewrite or to paraphrase these paragraphs, and then you submit it as your own work, but you have citations. And the latest iterations of ChatGPT, for example, can even do citations. So say, for example, you copied the paragraphs, you pasted it into ChatGPT, you asked it to cite, but you submit it as your work. So what would happen in this case is that AI detectors may pick it up. You are attempting to submit work that you have not added any value to. It's not plagiarism if you only copied a few paragraphs and it's only a small portion of your work. So that would be like paraphrasing somebody else's work, citing it, and you are putting it as part of your work, but it's not a large proportion of your work. So say, for example, you've got an 8-page report and you've paraphrased a couple of paragraphs which may amount to maybe half a page. You've cited it, but ChatGPT did the work for you. ChatGPT paraphrased it for you. ChatGPT did the citing. Is this plagiarism? No, it's not plagiarism. Is it academic misconduct? It can be, because if you're trying to get credit for work you didn't do, then this falls into unethical use. Because if the job was to paraphrase and to synthesize knowledge, but you use ChatGPT to do it, well, then you're attempting to get credit for work you didn't do, and that is misconduct. Right, number 4. You've asked generative AI to generate content, and you use its content to answer your assignment question. So say, for example, you were given an assignment, and in this assignment, you put the prompt into ChatGPT and you got ChatGPT to answer the assignment questions for you. Is this plagiarism? Is it academic misconduct? So this is how I would evaluate this. I would say no mark should be awarded because there's no evidence of the students learning. And then further, if it's mostly AI generated, then yes, a charge of academic misconduct may follow. Is it plagiarism? Now, this is tricky. What was the content that ChatGPT or generative AI generated? If it got it from other sources, for example, it generated from other journals or books, then it would be plagiarism. If this was like an opinionated thing where ChatGPT was attempting to give an opinion, of course, it is basing it on prior learning that it's had. It might not fall into the category of a plagiarism because it's difficult to determine who the original author was. But as I said, a charge of academic misconduct may still follow. And the reason is because too much of the work was generated from ChatGPT and there is no student's voice. The student didn't have any evidence of their own learning. Number 5, you ask ChatGPT to check your original work. So you've got your own original work. Before you submit it to your professor or your educator, you want to improve it a bit. So you ask ChatGPT to check it. You use generative AI in a way where you're asking it to check if the work can be improved. Now, my view is that this is acceptable and actually can be recommended because the more eyes that can look at your work and challenge you to improve on it, the better. It would be the same as asking a parent or another lecturer or even your supervisor to check it and say, look, critique my work and I will take it after that and improve it. So if you ask ChatGPT to check your work and it gives you some ideas and then you build on your original work, taking the ideas from ChatGPT, that's fine because you are reviewing and improving on your work and it's still your original work. So this should not be considered unethical and it should not be academic misconduct and it's not plagiarism. However, your supervisor might ask for evidence of your original work. And of course, because it was your original work, you have it. Yes, you did ask generative AI to check or to critique your work. It's fine. You show the evidence of the critique and how you improved your work. Okay, let's go to number 6. You ask generative AI to provide content for one or more sections in your assignment or your literature review. So it's not the whole literature review, it's not the whole assignment, but yes, some of it you are asking ChatGPT to generate for you. You ask the generative AI to provide citations. It does. However, you don't check the work. You merely copy it, put it into your assignment or your literature review, and unfortunately, the generative AI did not cite correctly. So you did not check the citations and they were actually incorrect. So this is how it would play out. Unfortunately, you are now submitting work that makes a false claim. It is misconduct, irrespective of where you got your data from. Since you are now submitting the work under your name will be there. A charge of plagiarism could be raised against you because you've actually made a false claim. Yes, it may have been done by mistake, but if you use generative AI and it makes a mistake, it's now your mistake because you are submitting it in your assignment and whose name is on the assignment? Yours. And that section, even though it was generated by ChatGPT and there were citations, but those citations were incorrect, which means it's a false claim. And that is also plagiarism. So even though the AI made the mistake, you're the final person in this because it was the student's job to check it. Therefore, if I say it wasn't my fault, ChatGPT did this, I should not be charged with plagiarism. The response is, well, you needed to check the AI. So unfortunately, I would still face a charge of misconduct. I have this additional slide, and the reason I have it is because many students are unaware that, do you know that incorrect citation is also a type of plagiarism? So if a source is cited inaccurately, For example, if I miss some key details, I misunderstand the points, even if I have the reference incorrect, maybe I have the wrong date, I have the wrong name there, and it was just a mistake, I could be charged with plagiarism. Yes, of course, it's a mistake. And if I did it once, I'm not going to go to prison. However, again, we go back to the earlier slide. How often did it happen? What is the level of the student? How important was that citation to the whole work, etc.? So even mistakes can be considered plagiarism. A proper citation needs the author's name, the date, the title, where it was published, and in some cases, even the page number. So even unintentional errors in referencing can count as plagiarism if they mislead about the source of the ideas or words used. And this often occurs when using generative AI. Be aware of that, please. Okay, let's get back to our examples. We're at number 7. You paste many copied paragraphs into generative AI and you ask it to critically evaluate the work, and then you use the generative AI work as your own work. Your action was merely to prompt generative AI to perform tasks for you. Is this academic misconduct? Is it plagiarism? So this is my take on it. Since 99% of the work was generated by ChatGPT or generative AI, if you're trying to hand this in as your own work, this is misconduct because you're attempting to get credit for work you did not do. And that is actually cheating, and you might find yourself charged with academic misconduct. Right, let's go to the last example. You paste many copied paragraphs into ChatGPT and you ask it to critically evaluate the work. You use the generative AI work as your own work. You then have many questions and prompts demonstrating that you query ChatGPT, and you can show that you were trying to understand how ChatGPT arrived at its conclusions. You can demonstrate all your conversational prompts, which you also submit as evidence to the lecturer. Now, this is a tricky case, and this would have to be handled case by case because there is some proof of learning. The problem is paragraphs were copied and pasted into ChatGPT, and that part is the plagiarism. So if I took journal article paragraphs, I pasted it into ChatGPT and I said, what does this mean? What does that mean? Paraphrase it. The question is, why did I copy it in the first place? If I copied it in order for ChatGPT to explain it to me, and thereafter I had my own opinions and my own research after that, it would probably be okay. Because in this case, you're using ChatGPT to be a tutor. But if we find that there's extensive copied paragraphs and they were paraphrased, and yes, you asked ChatGPT to explain some things, but you still submitted too much of ChatGPT's work, meaning there isn't enough of your own voice present, then this would lean towards the plagiarism side. So this is where it would have to be evaluated case by case. And that's why you would want to keep your session that you had with ChatGPT showing that you were trying to use ChatGPT as a tutor in this case. From time to time, I also copy a paragraph and put it into generative AI, and I ask generative AI to give me its opinion. But if I submit generative AI's opinion and there's none of my own work, then yes, that fulfills the definition of misconduct. It's attempting to get credit for work I did not do. But if I was using ChatGPT to teach me, and then it explained the paragraph to me, and then I continued with that, I gave my own opinions, I built on that, I added additional resources to it, etc. Then yes, while ChatGPT's influence is there, it's mostly my influence, my demonstration of learning, and that would be okay. So this would be a case by case because it depends on how much content is mine and how much content I got from somewhere else. And again, it speaks to the earlier slide about what is the level of the student, how much of the work was used, how similar is it to the original, what is this used for, is this going to be a journal article, is this a master's, etc. Your lecturer may ask you further questions to assess the range of your understanding. What I do is, if I'm not sure, I just ask the students some questions, and if they can explain all the work that they're handing in, I'm usually satisfied because then they have had a time to learn and they can demonstrate learning by demonstrating understanding by answering my questions. But if I ask them and they have no idea what it is that's on the page, that means they have copied and presented it and they don't understand it, which is academic misconduct because it's now copied work and there's no evidence of the student's learning. But if the student is using generative AI for their learning, using it as a tutor, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's actually recommended. If you don't have someone else to teach you, then use the generative AI. That's one of the reasons why it's there. However, just always remember that you must cross-reference generative AI with other original sources. Don't only rely on ChatGPT and platforms like that. So when is using generative AI cheating? Well, think of it like this. In terms of misconduct, if your tutor does your assignment for you, then that's cheating. The same applies when using AI. If you get AI to do the work for you, that's cheating because you're attempting to get credit for something you did not do. Now, AI does indeed make it a lot easier to perform a literature review, but failure to cite the original authors is still plagiarism, even if the text has been paraphrased and even if it was paraphrased really well. So if I use AI extensively and I build up an assignment just using AI and I don't fully understand the work that I'm submitting, well, this is a misconduct because I have no proof of my learning. Therefore, if someone assesses me, asks me some questions, and I can't answer the questions, then that is evidence that I've cheated. Thus, if I use AI entirely to generate my work, even with citations, even with paraphrasing, this will be considered academic misconduct because I'm not studying at a university to test how good AI is. So the university's goal is to assess learning, is to assess competence, not to assess how good AI is. So therefore, I must be able to demonstrate my learning. If I can't demonstrate my learning, well, then it's quite easy to see that I've cheated. Now, what are some ethical uses of generative AI? Well, you may use generative AI such as Google, Quillbot, and platforms like that to assist your work. Just like a tutor can help you and help you with your learning, well, same as generative AI. It's there to assist in our learning. So actually, please even consider such tools to assist you in your idea generation, brainstorming, checking your work, editing, and proofing of your grammar. Using AI to teach you is also permitted and it's even recommended. Just remember to always cross-reference whatever you've learned. So here are some tips for using AI to assist you in your work. Ask AI to critically check your work, maybe give you some ideas, but remember that AI also has bias. You can ask AI to explain key points to you, so that's almost like your tutor. You can ask AI to assist in putting things in your own words, but just be careful because if you rely too much on AI to paraphrase your work, it removes your own voice, and also AI does make mistakes and you are responsible for those mistakes. Whether or not you use AI, you must cite the sources you used. Incorrect citation is also plagiarism. Using too much of someone's work is also plagiarism. So know the limits and be careful of becoming too dependent on generative AI. So thanks for watching and cheers.